Alara Voss had spent 3 years learning how to be invisible. She was good at it. As an Omega in the Ironblood pack, invisibility was not just a skill, it was survival. She kept her head down, she did her work in the healing ward, and she never spoke too loudly in rooms where powerful people stood. She had mastered the art of existing without taking up space, and on most days, that felt like enough. But every time Alpha King Cain Aldrich walked into a room, her chest pulled tight like a string being drawn on a bow. She had felt it since the night of the Blood Moon ceremony 3 years ago. That unmistakable pull, deep and certain, the kind the old stories said could not be faked or imagined. She knew what it meant. She had always known. She also knew, with equal certainty, that she would never say a word about it. Girls like her did not end up with kings like him. So she watched from doorways and kept her distance, and she told herself that some things were simply not meant to be touched, only felt from far away. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. The palace herald stood in the center of the great hall and announced, in a voice that carried to every corner of the room, that Alpha King Cain Aldrich would be married at the next full moon. His chosen partner was Seraphine Cross, daughter of the Delta bloodline, a woman of rank and elegance and political value. The pack erupted in cheers. Alara stood near the back of the crowd and felt the world go very quiet around her. She did not cry. She simply stood still while the noise washed over her, and when the crowd began to move, she moved with it, back to her small room in the Omega quarters, where she sat on the floor and watched the sun go down through her narrow window. She was still sitting there when it rose again. The next morning, she was summoned to the throne room, not invited, summoned, the way one summons a servant. She walked through the stone corridors of the palace with her hands folded in front of her, and she stood before Cain Aldrich's throne while he looked down at her with eyes the color of winter sky. He looked at her the way men look at things they have already decided to set aside. "I know what you are to me," he said. His voice was even and controlled, "and I am choosing to end it. You are Omega. You carry no bloodline worth an alliance, and no power worth a crown. I release you from the mate bond. Do not approach me again." She noticed the way his jaw tightened as he said it. She noticed the subtle flinch that moved through his shoulders, as though something inside him had reacted to his own words before he could stop it. But his face returned to stone almost immediately, and he turned away before she could speak. She was not given the chance to speak. Alara walked out of the palace with her hands still folded and her head still level. She did not look back. That night, the rejection hit her the way it always hit Omegas, not like a clean break, but like something being pulled slowly from the root. She lay in her bed and breathed through it until breathing was the only thing she could think about, and sometime before dawn, she made a decision. She was leaving. 3 days later, she stood at the edge of Ironblood territory with a single bag over her shoulder. Inside it were her healer's tools, her books, her grandmother's coat, and enough silver coin to travel far. Her mother's sister lived in the east, in the territory of a pack called Kingsmark, beyond the Ashvale Mountains. It was far enough. It would do. She walked away from Ironblood without saying goodbye to anyone except Ressa, the head healer, who pressed both her hands and said nothing, which was exactly the right thing to do. Kingsmark was not what Alara expected. She had grown up in a pack where rank was everything, where the gap between Alpha and Omega was measured not just in power, but in the way people spoke to each other, looked at each other, moved around each other. Ironblood had a particular kind of silence that followed Omegas into every room. Kingsmark did not have that silence. The territory was broad and well kept, its people loud in the easy way of those who feel secure. The medical ward where Alara was hired within a week of arriving was run by a woman named Ressa, a different Ressa, sharper and funnier, who took one long look at Alara on her first day and said, "You've been through something. You don't have to tell me what," and then immediately handed her a patient chart and moved on. Alara liked her immediately. She settled into the work the way she always settled into things, quietly, thoroughly, without complaint. She learned the territory's plants and its people. She learned which elder had a bad knee that worsened in cold weather, and which child was terrified of the examination table. She was good at her work, in the particular way that comes not from talent alone, but from paying careful attention to what people actually need. She did not think about Cain. Or rather, she thought about him the way one thinks about a healed wound, aware that it existed, aware that it had changed the shape of things, but no longer pressing on it to see if it still hurt. She met King Damon Lior 4 months after her arrival, when he came to the ward with a cut along his forearm from a border patrol dispute. It was not serious, but it needed stitching. The senior healers were occupied with a more complicated case, and Alara was the one who answered the call. She cleaned the wound without ceremony. She told him the stitching would pinch. She worked quickly and well, and when she was done, she tied off the last stitch and reached for the bandage without looking up. He said, "You're new here." She said, "4 months." He said, "Where from?" She said, "Far enough that it doesn't matter." He didn't push. He paid the standard ward fee, thanked her, and left. She thought nothing of it. He thought about it for 2 weeks. After that, he kept finding reasons to pass through the medical ward. A question about a pack elder's treatment. A request for advice on an herbal remedy for one of the children. Each visit was genuinely purposeful, and each time he came, he stayed a few minutes longer than was strictly necessary, asking questions with the focused attention of someone who is actually listening to the answers. Ilara noticed. She was not unobservant, but she treated him the same way she treated everyone, directly and without performance, and she waited to see what he would do with it. What he did was this. One evening in the ward garden, where she was checking on the rosemary she had planted along the south wall, he came and stood at the gate and said, "I think the moon goddess has given me a second chance at something. I don't intend to handle it carelessly." He said it plainly, without decoration, looking at her with steady eyes. Alara set down her gardening cloth and told him the truth. She told him about Ironblood, about the throne room, and the words spoken in a voice that carried no warmth. About the rejection, and the 3 days after, and the long walk east. She told him she had survived it, but that survival had left marks, and that she was not sure she was ready to be someone's anything again. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's fair. I'm not asking you to decide tonight." She looked at him in the low light of the evening and felt something she had almost forgotten, the particular safety of being in a place where no one was asking her to be less than she was. It took 2 more months. It was Alara who decided first, quietly, the way she did everything. She came to him on a morning in early spring, while he was reading reports in his study with the window open, and she said simply, "I accept." He already knew what she meant. The ceremony was not large. Damon did not believe in spectacle, and Alara had never wanted one. But the hall was full of people who had come because they wanted to, not because they were required, and Ressa cried openly in the first row, and told everyone around her that she absolutely was not. Alara stood beside Damon in a dress the color of winter moonlight, and accepted the Luna crown with the same steadiness she brought to everything she did. She was Luna now, not because of her bloodline or her rank or who her family was. She was Luna because she had chosen it, and it had chosen her. And the difference between that and everything that came before was the difference between a door being opened and a door being locked. The news reached Ironblood 3 weeks after the ceremony. Cain was in his private study when the diplomatic missive arrived from Kingsmark, a formal announcement of the new Luna, accompanied by a portrait. His advisor placed it on his desk with the rest of the day's correspondence. He opened it last. He saw her face, and something inside him came apart. The bond he had rejected, the one he had been so certain he had severed cleanly, so convinced had been the right and logical choice, tore open again with a force that dropped him to one knee behind his desk. His wolf, which had been quiet and controlled for months, surfaced with a desperation that felt nothing like control. He overturned the desk. He put his fist through the wall beside the window. He stood in the middle of the wreckage of his own composure, and understood, with the kind of clarity that only arrives when it is too late, exactly what he had done. He had thrown away the one thing his wolf had ever recognized as home. His wedding to Seraphine was 11 days away. His wolf refused to participate. Not metaphorically, literally refused. It would not cooperate. It sat in the center of his chest like a stone and would not move, and for the first time in Cain Aldrich's life, he could not command his own nature into compliance. Seraphine came to him the night before the wedding, and looked at him with clear, calm eyes, and said she had suspected there was a prior bond. She said she had already been making other plans. She said she would appreciate it if he did not waste her time with guilt. Then she left, and he was grateful for her, which was a strange thing to feel at the end of something. He rode east at dawn. The Kingsmark border guards received him with professional courtesy and made him wait 3 hours before granting entry, which was both correct and deliberate. He was brought to a formal council chamber, where King Daemon Leor received him with perfect manners, and the particular coldness of a man who knows exactly what he is protecting and why. Cain asked to speak with Alara. Daemon said, "You may submit a formal request. She will decide whether to receive you." She agreed to see him. She chose the ward garden, her ground, the space she had built in the months since she arrived. She was standing near the rosemary when he came through the gate, and she did not move toward him or away from him. She simply waited. He looked worse than she expected. Not in any visible way that could be easily named, but there was something undone about him, something fraying at the edges. His wolf was close to the surface. She could feel it even from across the garden, restless and urgent. He told her everything. He told her about the portrait and what it had done to him. He told her about his wolf refusing the wedding, about the wall he had broken, about the months of thinking he had made the right choice, and the moment he understood he had not. He said he had been wrong. He said it without decoration, because he was not a man who practiced apology easily, but he was not dishonest when the truth was necessary. Alara listened to every word. When he finished, she said, "I know what the bond feels like. I felt it too, and I lived through you ending it, because I had no other option." She told him she was not angry. Anger had visited her and moved on, the way things do when you stop feeding them. She told him that the Omega who had stood in his throne room was not the person standing in front of him now, and that the distance between those two people had been earned by her alone, without any help from him. She said, "You made a choice, Cain. You looked at what I was, and decided it wasn't enough. I accepted that, and I built something from what was left. That's not something I can undo for you, and I wouldn't if I could." She picked up her gardening cloth from the bench beside her. "I hope your wolf finds peace. I mean that honestly. But I am not the answer to that anymore. I haven't been for a long time." She walked back through the gate into the ward. She did not look back. And this time, unlike that morning in the palace, unlike the walk away from Ironblood, she was not walking away from something. She was walking toward her life, which was already full and good and entirely her own. Cain returned to Ironblood. He made no challenge to Kingsmark. He had no right to one, and he knew it. He spent the months that followed in the difficult and unglamorous work of being a better leader, more careful with his people, more honest about the ways pride had cost him more than rank or politics ever could. His wolf settled eventually, not into happiness exactly, but into something quieter and more honest than what it had been before. Alara planted more herbs along the south wall of the ward garden. She treated her patients. She sat with Daemon in the evenings while the stars came out over Kingsmark territory, and found, in the steadiness of that life, something she had not known she was missing, the feeling of being exactly where she was supposed to be. On the night of the blood moon, a faint silver light glowed at her collarbone, the mark she had hidden for so many years, finally visible, finally certain. Daemon saw it and said nothing. He only took her hand. The moon goddess, it turned out, had always known what she was doing. She had simply been waiting for Alara to find her way to the life that was already waiting for her. And she had.